Max Verstappen just drove a Mercedes, and what he exposed has Formula One on edge. Not in a test. Not in the off-season. Right in the middle of a championship fight. At the Nürburgring. One of the most dangerous circuits in the world. Over 100 corners. Zero margin for error. Constant traffic. And within minutes, he was operating at a level that takes most drivers years to reach. But that's not the shocking part. Because this wasn't just a one-off appearance. This was a calculated program, designed to prepare for the 24 hours of Nürburgring. And what he learned inside that Mercedes is exactly what drivers don't want him to bring back into Formula One. Because this track exposes everything. Your limits. Your reactions. Your control under pressure. And Verstappen didn't just handle it. He looked completely in control. Calm. Precise. Effortless. Almost like he had done it his entire career. So now the question is no longer what happened that weekend. It's what changed. Because if a driver can jump into a completely different car, on the hardest circuit in motorsport, and instantly perform at that level, then what happens when he returns to Formula One with that experience? Stay with me. Because what Verstappen revealed at the Nürburgring might change everything. At first, it looked like a simple appearance. A guest entry. A side project. Something to fill the gap between two Formula One races. But that assumption didn't last long. Because this wasn't random. It was planned. Carefully structured. Part of a multi-step program designed around one goal, mastering the Nürburgring before the biggest endurance race of them all. And that changes how you should see everything that followed. Because when a driver like Verstappen commits to a program like this, he's not experimenting. He's investing. Time. Energy. Focus. All in the middle of a Formula One season. And that decision alone raises a serious question. Why take that risk? Why step into one of the most unpredictable environments in motorsport, while fighting at the highest level in another category? The answer starts to appear the moment he gets on track. Because the Nürburgring is not just a circuit. It's a filter. It strips away comfort, removes routine, forces drivers into situations they cannot fully control. Every lap is different. Grip changes corner by corner. Weather can shift without warning. And traffic never stops. This is not about perfect laps. This is about survival through adaptation. And this is where most drivers struggle. Because they rely on patterns, on repetition, on familiarity. But here, none of that exists. You are constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, constantly thinking ahead. Now add another layer. A completely different car. A GT3 machine. Heavier, less responsive, built on a totally different philosophy. ABS changes braking points. Traction control changes throttle behavior. The car moves differently. It communicates differently. Everything feels unfamiliar. And yet, Verstappen didn't treat it like something new. He treated it like something he already understood. No hesitation. No visible adjustment phase. Just immediate control. And that's where people started paying attention. Because adapting quickly is impressive. But skipping the adaptation phase entirely, that's something else. And it leads to a much deeper concern. Because if a driver can enter a completely new environment, with a completely different car, on one of the hardest tracks in the world, and look comfortable almost instantly, then what does that say about his ceiling? But we're not at the key moment yet. Because everything so far still happens in isolation. Driver, car, track. The real pressure begins when you add other cars into the equation. And what happened next is exactly where everything started to shift. The moment other cars entered the picture, everything changed. Because up to that point, you could still argue it was controlled. Clean laps. Clear focus. No external pressure. But the Nürburgring never stays clean for long. Traffic arrives. And when it does, it transforms the entire race. Faster cars closing in. Slower cars fighting their own battles. Different lines. Different braking points. Unpredictable decisions. All happening at the same time. This is where races are won, or quietly lost. Because in this environment, hesitation is expensive. You wait 1 second too long, the gap disappears. You choose the wrong side, you lose momentum. And momentum here is everything. Now watch what Verstappen did. He didn't hesitate. Not once. He wasn't reacting to traffic. He was anticipating it. Before the corner. Before the overtake. Before the situation fully developed. He was already positioning the car. Already setting up the next move. And that level of anticipation is not normal. Because most drivers need confirmation. They wait to see the gap. They react when it opens. But Verstappen committed before it existed. That changes the entire dynamic. Because suddenly, he's not following the race. He's dictating it. And here's the detail that made people uncomfortable. He wasn't forcing moves. No aggression for the sake of it. No unnecessary risks. Everything looked efficient. Minimal inputs. Maximum result. That's the kind of driving that doesn't just gain time. It saves energy. Mental energy. Physical energy. And over hours, that becomes a massive advantage. But there's another layer. One that most people completely miss. Because traffic at the Nürburgring is not just about overtaking. It's about trust. You are relying on other drivers to behave in ways you cannot control. And that creates hesitation, even for experienced drivers. But Verstappen removed that hesitation. He read intentions, predicted movements, adjusted before the danger appeared. And when you reach that level, you stop driving reactively. You start operating proactively. And that is where the gap begins to grow. Not in one corner, not in one lap, but over time. Small gains, repeated perfectly, until they become something much bigger. Now take that idea and place it back into Formula One. A more controlled environment, more predictable behavior, fewer variables. What happens then? The driver who mastered chaos finds simplicity, finds clarity, finds even more time. And that is exactly why this moment matters. Because what Verstappen showed in traffic was not just skill, it was control under uncertainty. And when a driver gains control in chaos, everything else starts to feel easier. But we're still not at the most important shift. Because while all of this was happening around him, something else was happening inside the car. Something slower, less visible, but far more powerful. Because this race was not decided in seconds. It was shaped over hours. And what Verstappen did with that time is what truly reveals everything. Time is where everything becomes real. Not one lap, not 2 laps, but hour after hour, inside the same pressure. Because endurance racing doesn't reward speed alone. It rewards control over time. And time is where most drivers begin to fade. The focus drops slightly. The precision softens. The reactions slow down, just enough to make a mistake. And at the Nürburgring, a small mistake is never just small. Now this is where Verstappen did something different. He didn't treat each lap as a separate moment. He treated the entire stint as one continuous process. No spikes in aggression. No unnecessary risks. No emotional driving. Just consistency. Lap after lap. Corner after corner. And that kind of discipline is extremely difficult to maintain. Because the instinct of a Formula One driver is to push, to extract everything. Every single lap. But here, he resisted that instinct. He held back, just enough. And that just enough is where the real intelligence appears. Because he wasn't driving slower. He was driving smarter. Managing the car. Managing the tires. Managing himself. And this is where something subtle, but critical, started to build. Trust. Trust in the car. Trust in the rhythm. Trust in his own decisions. And once that trust is established, everything becomes smoother. More efficient. More controlled. Now here's the part that changes everything. Because when a driver learns how to operate at a high level for hours, they unlock something most drivers never fully master. Sustained precision. Not for a qualifying lap. Not for a short stint. But indefinitely. And that kind of precision is what wins championships. Because in Formula One, the biggest mistakes don't happen at the beginning. They happen at the end. When fatigue appears. When pressure increases. When everything is on the line. And that's exactly where this experience starts to matter. Because Verstappen has now trained his mind to stay sharp longer, to stay calm deeper into the race, to maintain clarity when others begin to lose it. And that creates a difference you cannot always see on the timing screens. But it's there. In the decisions. In the positioning. In the moments where others hesitate, and he doesn't. But there's one final layer. And this is the one that truly reveals everything. Because while he was managing time, while he was controlling the pace, while he was building consistency, he was also doing something much more powerful. He was removing pressure. Not from the race, but from himself. No frustration. No urgency. No need to prove anything in a single moment. Just complete control over his mindset. And when a driver reaches that state, they become incredibly difficult to break. Because pressure no longer forces mistakes. It sharpens decisions. And that's the transformation that people inside the paddock started to feel. This wasn't just a strong performance. It was evolution. A driver becoming more complete, more stable, more dangerous. And if that evolution continues, then what happened at the Nürburgring was not just a comeback. It was the moment everything changed. And now, we reach the part nobody wants to say out loud. Because everything you've heard so far still sounds like improvement, like progression, like a driver getting better. But this is something else. This is separation. Because once a driver reaches that level of control, they stop competing on the same terms. They start operating on a different layer. And that's exactly what the Nürburgring revealed. Not just what Verstappen can do, but how he does it. Because there's a moment in every race where things become unstable. Strategy starts to shift. Tires begin to drop. Other drivers start making mistakes. And that's where races are decided. Not at the beginning. Not even in the middle. But in those final moments, when pressure peaks. Now think about everything he just added. Control in chaos. Precision in traffic. Endurance over hours. Emotional stability under pressure. That combination doesn't just make you fast. It makes you inevitable. And that's the word that started to circulate. Quietly. Carefully. But very clearly. Inevitable. Because if a driver doesn't break under pressure, if a driver doesn't lose precision over time, if a driver doesn't hesitate in unpredictable situations, then how do you beat them? You can't rely on mistakes. You can't wait for opportunities. You have to create something extraordinary. And that's where the tension begins. Because most drivers depend on those moments. They depend on errors, on instability, on pressure doing the work for them. But if Verstappen removes that variable, then the entire equation changes. And here's the final piece. The one that truly explains why this moment matters so much. This wasn't Formula One. There were no points on the line. No championship pressure. No direct rivals in the same machinery. And yet, he approached it with complete precision. Complete focus. Complete control. Which means one thing. This level is now natural to him.